Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Reiser in for Vladimir Duthier. We are watching all of the stories coming into the CBS Broadcast Center from our partners here in the U.S. and around the world. If it's happening, we are going to bring it to you live. This is CBS News 24/7. Jamaica is now in Beryl's sights. What the island is facing and what's next on the Category 4 hurricane's path. Officials are investigating a stampede in central India that killed more than 100 people. What led up to the disaster? And the July 4th trifecta of barbecues, fireworks, and TSA lines. We have live reporters giving us a glimpse of the rush both in the air and on the roads. But we are going to start with Hurricane Beryl closing in on Jamaica, and residents could face life-threatening storm surge and heavy rain and winds. This storm is currently a Category 4 hurricane. It has killed at least 6 people throughout the Caribbean islands. CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen is in Montego Bay, Jamaica, following the storm's path. Tom, what are you experiencing and how bad could it get?
Hey there, Lindsay. Well, I want to give you a sense of what's going on here. We're in the city center right now, and honestly, it looks like any other day, but that's not going to be the case for long. I want you to take a look. People are already starting to prepare for this storm. You can see these windows are boarded up, and then you can see down there are sandbags for potential flooding, and that is a serious concern. You know, we spoke to 2 Americans just a minute ago. These 2 people right here, they say that they are stranded. They were supposed to fly out today. That is no longer the case because the airport obviously is closed for the foreseeable future until that hurricane warning is lifted. So I want to take a look down the street here. You can see that a vendor is set up. People are just kind of going about their day at the moment, but come midday, that situation is going to change. It is going to deteriorate, and we are looking at some heavy rain, fierce winds, potentially up to a foot of rain. Now, where I'm standing right now, this city center, this is basically at sea level. Another major concern here is going to be, of course, that catastrophic storm surge that has already done serious damage where this storm has made landfall. That is of concern for this area as well. So we're going to be watching this situation very closely. The anticipation is high for what this storm might bring, and Beryl is coming. We'll be here to catch it all. Lindsay.
Okay, Tom, appreciate you and your crew. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Let's go ahead and bring in CBS News meteorologist Kate Bilo with the first look at the national forecast. Kate, what are you watching when it comes to Beryl?
Lindsay, of course, we are continuing to watch Beryl. We were expecting Beryl to hopefully weaken a bit more before making this close pass to Jamaica this afternoon. Unfortunately, it does not look like the storm is weakening much at all. So let's take a look at where Beryl is now and where the storm is going. Of course, we've seen all the images, the damage that Beryl did in Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Here is Beryl right now, a Category 4 hurricane. Winds are sustained at 145 miles per hour, gusts even stronger than that. And this is moving pretty quickly to the west-northwest at 20 miles an hour. Look at the scope of this storm in comparison with the island nation of Jamaica. This storm is likely to cut right to the south of the island, possibly making a landfall along the southern coast of Jamaica or passing just to the south. And that is going to happen really within the next 2 to 4 hours likely. You can see here's the track from the National Hurricane Center. Beryl expected to maintain Category 4 strength. We've put the rain on there so you can see how the heavy downpours will overspread the island from east to west. By 1 o'clock, again, very close to making a landfall here along the southern coast. Beryl then moves away, but then the Cayman Islands are up next, and this is going to pass just south of the Cayman Islands. That's exactly what you don't want, because that puts the Cayman Islands then on that dangerous northern side, that right front quadrant of the storm where you have the strongest winds and the worst of the storm surge flooding. Beryl then will head toward the Yucatan Peninsula, likely making another landfall just south of Cancun, and that would be Thursday night into Friday morning. And now, with the latest track from the National Hurricane Center, Beryl now expected to re-strengthen in the Gulf to a Category 1 hurricane and possibly make landfall near Brownsville, Texas by early next week. So this is the storm that just won't quit, and it is continuing to ravage the Caribbean. Impacts on Jamaica include storm surge up to 9 feet above normal tide levels, 3 to 6 inches of rain, possibly more than that, and flash flooding concerns, and of course, catastrophic wind damage, gusts possible over 150 miles per hour. And in fact, we put up the future winds here. I just want you to see how the winds are going to get worse as the day goes on. By noon, gusts over 90 miles per hour in eastern Jamaica. As we get toward the afternoon and evening hours, we could have gusts well over 100 miles an hour. And again, here is the forecast model putting the eye of Beryl right along the southern coast of Jamaica here later on this afternoon into this evening, with as much as a foot of rain possible in some spots. Coming up, we'll take you through what Beryl's expected to do as we head through the weekend, and of course, a look at the 4th of July forecast across the country. Lindsay, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, Kate, we'll see you soon. Thanks. The beginning of the 4th of July weekend starts in earnest today, with millions of people expected to take to the roads, the rails, the skies. The TSA has already predicted this holiday weekend will set records at airport checkpoints across the country. CBS News New York reporter Elijah Westbrook is at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey following this part of the story. Looking like those lines are getting longer, Elijah.
Oh, yeah, you see it there behind me, Lindsay. That's right. Good morning to you. And so far, it's really shaping up to be a busy day here at Newark Liberty International Airport. So to give you a perspective of where we are, we're standing just outside the bag drop check-in counter area for Spirit Airlines. I mean, the line has been simmering down just a bit. This is far cry from what we saw probably about an hour ago at this point. But this is something that travelers certainly want to be mindful of once they get to the terminal, that those lines could fluctuate ahead of then going into the TSA screening. Now, despite all that, you know, the airports are certainly active, to say the least. AAA predicts about 5.7 million people will fly from New York City alone, and then more than 2 million will fly from New Jersey. Now, keep in mind, Newark Airport in particular still experiencing an air traffic controller shortage, which has caused flights to be delayed and in some cases flat out canceled. Right now, we're only seeing 8 delays and 9 cancellations from Newark, and it's unclear if those issues are stemming from the shortage. However, we saw some of the worst of the chaos taking place Monday evening into Tuesday morning. So to try and fix that issue, we're learning the FAA is moving at least 17 controllers from New York and have them cover Newark's airspace from Philadelphia. Will that be the fix, of course, is the big question. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how all of this pans out. But Lindsay, so far, so good at this hour from Terminal B here at Newark Airport. Let's
I think people know if they're traveling for the weekend, you got to have some patience. You got to just roll with it. But yeah, 5% increase year over year, according to TSA. Incredible. Elijah, thanks so much. Turning now to a look at the roads. AAA says more than 70 million Americans are expected to travel for the holiday. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland taking a break from the Hill and hanging out to see how the roads are looking, Scott.
I was worried you wouldn't recognize me without the tie, without the jacket, and without the marble behind me. But I can tell you there's a different type of, and there's still gridlock, no matter which way you look at it. The traffic numbers are expected to peak between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. local times today and Sunday. They expect the volumes to be uniquely heavy this year, in part because of the timing. You have the 4th of July falling on a Thursday. You're just begging people to take a road trip for a 4-day weekend. Here are the numbers we get as we begin this holiday weekend extended. 60 million people projected to drive more than 50 miles over the course of this weekend. That's millions more than previous years. It could be an all-time high. You also have people capitalizing on what is, believe it or not, a lower gas price than it was in previous summers. $3.49 average across the country does incentivize driving. There's also precautions being taken. There are a number of state police agencies which will do DUI enforcement details enhanced around the holidays to curb that, but also preparing for response for more accidents, more traffic jams. The volumes are going to increase as everybody gets away from home between now and Sunday.
Because I don't think I'll ever be able to ask you this again, what's on your road trip playlist?
I like everything about that question as a 90s R&B fan. It never changes year to year. It stays the same. But it's always a balancing act when you're a parent. How much of anything can the kids tolerate? And they are very good at vocalizing when they've heard about enough of Daddy's music. Yeah, it's all frozen when we rent a car. Scott, thanks so much. Well, a new CBS News poll is giving us some insight into how voters are reacting to last week's debate between President Biden and Donald Trump. It shows Trump holds a slight lead both nationally and
In battleground states, when voters were asked about how age will factor into their vote, 69% said that Biden's age is playing a factor. But the president is not backing down. Today, he's meeting with Democratic governors whose support he needs. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is with us now. So, Nancy, what do we know about the president's meeting with governors this evening?
Lindsay is meeting with some of the governors who are going to be here in person. Some of them will be attending this meeting virtually, and I would describe this meeting as high risk, high reward. These Democratic governors are very influential, as you can imagine, in the party. If they all walk out of that meeting singing the same tune, saying the president seems strong, he made a strong case for staying in this race, and the fact that he can continue to serve for another 4 years, that will obviously be a huge boost for the president. If, however, word leaks out that the message that they gave to the president in that meeting was, we have concerns, we respect you, we think you've done a tremendous job, but we think that perhaps it might be time for you to step aside, that would obviously be incredibly damaging for the president, and that would make the next week or so for the Biden campaign, at the very least, a lot harder. It's not the only meeting he's holding today. He is going to be talking to Black radio stations, doing interviews with them. So that'll be interesting to see what he has to say in those interviews. We know last night he said for the first time that he may have been suffering from jet lag in the debate last week, and that he almost fell asleep, in his words, because of the busy travel stretch that he had about 11 days before the debate took place.
Nancy, on that point, let's go ahead and play an exchange between our colleague Weijia Jiang and Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre from yesterday.
After the debate, did the president get examined by a doctor, or did he get a neurological scan?
A neurological scan? Look, what I can say is that, just to take a step back, it was a bad night. We understand that it was a bad night. And the president has spoken to this, and he understands that.
What was your take on the tone of that briefing, and what are you watching for as an indication of the mood shifting in terms of where it is right now, status quo, it's up to him, we'll see what happens, to no, he needs to step aside?
I thought that was a really notable exchange, Lindsay, because I think that a lot of Democrats, a lot of supporters of the president watching on Thursday night were alarmed. They were worried. They felt that something was very out of character for him. They wanted to know what was wrong. They voiced that very clearly, and they continue to voice it. And when the White House press secretary was asked about that, it didn't appear that the White House had that same alarm. She really downplayed it, said a neurological scan, sort of suggesting why would we even do that, and simply left it at he had a bad night. And she repeated over and over again in her briefing, we get it, we understand that the American people have concerns, we know why they have concerns, we don't want to dismiss that. And yet, on the other hand, they haven't really offered a clear explanation for what happened, and they also haven't said that they're looking into it, that he's going to a doctor, that he's, that he himself is trying to figure out what happened, so that Democrats have more information to work with as they try to decide whether they are going to get behind him wholeheartedly and push for another 4 years, or whether they are going to step up their calls for him to take some time to decide what he wants to do.
Nancy, there's an all-staff campaign meeting today. Is that normal, or is that a sign of panic?
It's not normal, and it's happening at the same time that the White House Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients, is holding a meeting with staffers here at the White House. So these are simultaneous meetings. That's pretty unusual. So far, we've been told that these calls are simply meant to rally the troops, to get everyone focused, to tell them, get back to work. We're taking care of this. But we'll see what kinds of readouts we get after these calls take place, and find out what kind of explanation staffers are being given, because there are staffers who are concerned. It's not just Democratic lawmakers or Democratic voters. It's also staffers here at the White House and at the campaign who want to know more about the president, how he's doing, and his future.
Busy July 4th Eve in your beat. Nancy, thank you. Well, a new alert in Florida over dengue fever has been issued. What's being done to keep this from spreading beyond 2 cases right now? You're streaming CBS News 24/7. A wildfire is raging in California north of Sacramento, and it has torched more than 2,000 acres. This region is also battling high temperatures, including an excessive heat warning by the National Weather Service. CBS News Sacramento reporter Rachel Wolf is in Oroville, California. So, Rachel, are people being told to evacuate?
Correct. We have about 13,000 people that are under mandatory evacuation orders in this area, Lindsay. This is an area around Lake Oroville. Where is that in proximity to Sacramento? We're about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes north of Sacramento. Butte County, Chico State is kind of about half an hour away, just for folks to have some idea of where we are if you're watching across the country. And this fire started yesterday. We had triple-digit temperatures, record heat in some areas, and very high winds. And that gusty wind, once that fire ignited, it pushed the fire up into these canyons and into areas where there are homes. This is a home, sadly, that has been burned to the ground. It puts your hair on end, to be quite frank, after covering the campfire. This is what thousands of homes look like, and there's only about 3 or 4 on this court. This is Bessie Court here, south of Lake Oroville, but just the iconic chimneys standing and all of the debris. When we arrived on scene here, the house was actually still on fire, but you can see these vehicles over here. You can see how the metal has liquefied. It's like a javelin almost. That's how fast and hot the fire burned. It came right through this area, ripped through here, and thankfully CAL FIRE is stationed right over there, a number of trucks. And they were stationed here this morning, and they were able to stop this fire within inches of that house. So just know that this area has areas where there's no power because they've de-energized the lines to fight the fire. Smell of smoke, smell of plastics, and chainsaws. That's what we're hearing. So we're going to be monitoring this, a briefing at 7 o'clock. They'll give you updated numbers on containment because it was 0% contained overnight.
7 o'clock this morning or 7 o'clock this evening?
7 a.m. our time,
Okay.
so that would be 10 a.m. your time.
Any idea yet of how many structures are impacted?
They didn't have an idea overnight, Lindsay, but we're hoping they'll have a better idea. I mean, we saw for our own eyes 4 here on this court, and we drove around a little bit, but we didn't see any more. But that doesn't mean they aren't there, because a lot of these roads are switchbacks and ravines. I mean, this is the foothills here in California. So again, we're hoping to get that updated. I know it happened at 7. We haven't gotten an update from the newsroom. I'm hoping in the next few minutes. So we'll give you that information. Hopefully, like in the next half hour, we'll have that. And the wind has died down. That's really the key here, is the wind has died down, and that will help these firefighters get it more under control.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Flag us when you have more information. Appreciate it. Health officials have issued a dengue fever alert in the Florida Keys after 2 cases were locally acquired. That means the people didn't get sick while traveling. Just days ago, the CDC warned of a heightened risk of infections in the U.S. More than 240 travel-related cases of the mosquito-borne illness have been reported in Florida this year. Residents are urged to drain any standing water and use insect repellent. Officials in India are investigating the deadly stampede at a religious event that killed more than 100 people. CBS News producer Arshad Zargar is following this for us from New Delhi. Thanks for being with us. So I believe the death count right now, 121 people. Do we know how this happened?
Good morning, Lindsay. Yes, that's correct. 121 people are dead in this stampede. This happened in a small village, which is about 120 miles from the capital, New Delhi, where tens and thousands of devotees of a Hindu preacher had gathered in a field where some tents were put up, and they were there to listen to the sermon of the preacher. So when the sermon finished and the weather was very hot and humid, there are eyewitness accounts that when the sermon finished, everybody tried to rush out of the venue, and that's when the stampede happened. Most of the dead are women, and there are quite a few number of children in the dead as well.
Oh, that is so tragic. As you mentioned, the stampede happened at a prayer meeting of a Hindu preacher. Who is this man?
Interestingly, this is a person who goes by the name of Bole Baba. His real name is Suraj Pal. He's about 58 years old. He has a massive following. He's not very popular online, but tens and thousands of people follow him. They go to him for blessings, which are such kind of meetings were held every now and then, regularly every month. And this is a man who was a former police officer, Indian media reports say, and about 20 years ago, he quit his job and he turned to spirituality, and he started giving these public sermons. And over the years, he grew in popularity and amassed, I believe, some large amount of wealth. He has some 30 acres of ashram. Ashram is sort of a temple, a facility where your devotees come to seek blessings. And now he's absconding after this accident, after this incident. Police are now looking for him.
Oh, it's just so tragic all around. Arshad, thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you.
Well, a new medication on the market could slow Alzheimer's disease. Who the good candidates are for the drug and how much it costs. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Here are some of the top stories we're following right now. There's a second FDA-approved Alzheimer's drug that can modestly slow the progression of the disease. The agency approved Eli Lilly's Kisunla for patients with mild or early cases. Eli Lilly says a year's supply could cost around $32,000. Liquid egg products are being pulled from stores and restaurants because they were misbranded. Michael Foods is recalling more than 4,000 pounds of Fair Meadow Foundation's liquid eggs because it did not declare that the product contains milk. The recall impacts 9 states. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are teaming up for the WNBA All-Star team to play against the U.S. Olympic team. The 2 rookies were selected by votes from the media, players, and fans, as well as the league's 12 coaches. It's only the 8th time that 2 rookies have been on the team. The showdown will take place July 20th in Phoenix. Back now to one of our top stories, tracking Hurricane Beryl. It's on the move toward Jamaica right now, and the storm is currently a Category 4 hurricane. It has already killed 6 people throughout the Caribbean islands. The storm is tracking east and could reach Mexico or even the southern U.S. by the weekend. For more on Hurricane Beryl's forecast, let's bring in CBS Miami meteorologist Casey Sherman. Hi, Casey.
Yeah, Beryl, it's been weakening thanks to some wind shear, but still a dangerous Category 4 hurricane with 145-mile-per-hour max sustained winds. You can see that eye has now been filled in with some cloud cover, a sign that it is undergoing some wind shear, which should continue to weaken it over the next couple days. But Jamaica, and over about the next couple hours here, as we head into the afternoon, midday, will start to experience devastating hurricane-force winds, life-threatening storm surge, and very, very, very heavy rain with flash flooding. You can see the wind field here, the yellow showcasing the tropical storm force winds, hurricane force winds in red, those hurricane force winds pushing on shore to at least the south coast of Jamaica heading into this afternoon. Storm surge there, we're expecting between 6 to 9 feet and some very, very heavy rain with the threat of mudslides as well. Hurricane warnings remain in effect from Jamaica out towards the Cayman Islands. We've also seen hurricane watches now issued out across the east coast of the Yucatan Peninsula as Beryl will continue this rapid pace off to the west-northwest heading into today and tomorrow, eventually reaching the Yucatan Peninsula by Friday. We are anticipating some weakening as we head into the next couple days. From there, it then reemerges out over water in the southern Gulf of Mexico as a weaker system. But notice we start to see that forecast cone turn to the north. We're going to be tracking the area of high pressure that kept it on this west-northwesterly track slide eastward, which could allow for Beryl to make this northerly turn. Everyone from the coast of Texas down through northeastern Mexico will need to stay on alert as we head into this holiday weekend.
Casey, thank you. Let's go ahead now and bring in CBS News at Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with a look at what we can expect for the holiday weekend. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Lindsay. Yes, so many people are traveling today and possibly tomorrow, getting in their 4th of July travel. And of course, Beryl is the top story, but also we have heat and we have storms. So let's go ahead and take a look at where Beryl is now. First and foremost, I want to put the clouds on our globe here. You can see that massive storm on the satellite imagery as it moves across the Caribbean. And again, that is something we will continue to be tracking as we go right through the upcoming weekend, especially if your travels take you through Texas. There is a chance by the end of the weekend, cities like Brownsville will be looking at some impacts from Beryl. As we take a look at the greater United States, and I want to put the clouds on the map here because I want to show you a front that's moving through portions of the Midwest. And this is going to put a damper on perhaps some fireworks displays for the 4th of July across the Northeast and parts of the Midwest as storms fire up and may cause postponements or cancellations. Again, once of those fireworks displays. Let's talk about the travel forecast first and foremost. Out west, the big story, as we've been talking about, is the heat, and the heat will continue to building right up into the Pacific Northwest as we get into the weekend. Today's high in Phoenix, 113 degrees, and the heat continues as we move east, looking at triple-digit temperatures in Oklahoma City, in Dallas, down toward Houston. We're looking at 96. The humidity will make it feel hotter once again. And there's the front, which is now moving into Kansas City, could cause some delays at the airport there thanks to thunderstorms this afternoon. Across the Northeast today is a beautiful day for travel, but unfortunately it's not going to stay as nice as we get into the holiday tomorrow. Let's talk about our heat watches and warnings, especially building out west where we've got a heat warning for much of Southern California and Arizona. Heat warnings here across portions of the lower Mississippi Valley as well. So your 4th of July headlines, the sizzling heat continues to build in the west, severe storms impacting the Midwest and parts of the east, and the heat begins to recede a bit across the southeast. We'll have more on what to expect through the rest of the weekend coming up later on in the broadcast. Lindsay, I'll send it back to you.
Kate, thank you. And the lines are already forming at some airports across the country as a record number of people are expected to travel by plane and car this 4th of July holiday. Let's go to CBS News Minnesota reporter Pauline Lee with a look at how things are looking at St. Paul International Airport.
I'm Pauline Lee at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport talking about holiday travel this Independence Day, expected to hit record numbers as nearly 71 million Americans are expected to travel. Well, airport travel isn't expected to peak until Friday, but here at MSP International, we're already starting to see those long lines. South End almost wrapping down to halfway down the airport lobby here, and it's almost the same as the North End as well. Now, traveling by car today and Sunday are going to be your busiest days, and traveling anytime this holiday weekend, it's going to be big for several reasons. Number one, tickets are expected to be a little cheaper than this time last year, and gas prices are also cheap. We talk about the national average being about $3.50 for a gallon of unleaded. Here in Minnesota, it's even cheaper. Right now, it's about $3.32 a gallon, and that's cheaper than this time it was last year by about 12 cents or so. We'll send it back to you.
Thanks so much. AAA says more than 70 million people are taking to the roads this weekend. CBS News Pittsburgh reporter Sheila Kase-Adeli has more.
Good morning. The sun is up in western Pennsylvania, and that means people are heading out onto the roads to their destinations for their holiday destinations. Right now, it's pretty steady. There's some tractor trailers and cars moving through this interchange in Monroeville outside Pittsburgh. Locally, the PA Turnpike is expecting 670,000 people to travel this stretch of road today. For the 10-day period, that number will be about 5.6 million drivers. Nationally, AAA says over 60 million people will drive to their destinations. If you are hitting the roads, you'll want to do it now or soon, though. The worst time to hit the roads today will be between 2 and 7 p.m. Reporting outside Pittsburgh, I'm Sheila Kase-Adeli, CBS News.
Well, concerns and questions are mounting among Democrats in the wake of President Biden's poor debate performance against Donald Trump. Former Democrat Ohio Representative Tim Ryan called for Kamala Harris to be the nominee last night on America Decides.
Rip the Band-Aid off. We have a great vice president who has 3.5 years of seasoning in the highest levels of government. She would be a great campaigner, energize our base. So many of the different aspects of the Democratic coalition would be super excited about a Kamala Harris run. And we should get behind her and take the campaign to Donald Trump and get this country back where it needs to be.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins me now. Nicole, what's the latest in terms of public and private sentiment regarding the president's health and stamina?
Well, Lindsay, what we can tell you is that President Biden has reached out to a number of congressional members and leaders, including Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, as well as Delaware Senator Chris Coons. Of course, this comes as some rank-and-file Democrats, particularly House Democrats, have expressed concerns about the president. They've been having internal conversations and concerned about his stamina going forward and his viability potentially as a candidate in this race. CBS News has learned that there is a group of House Democrats and frontliners that are circulating a letter potentially calling on the president to transition out of the race. This comes after Texas Representative Lloyd Doggett became the first sitting Democrat to call on the president to withdraw.
Nicole, what are you watching for in terms of a shifting of the tide? I mean, right now it feels like some Democrats are saying things, but on background, not revealing their name. We still have, I believe, the representative from Doggett from Texas being the only sitting lawmaker right now who's called for the president to step aside. Do you feel like there's a lot of talk in the background before more people start to come forward with that?
Well, I think, what I'm hearing behind the scenes is that some are taking a wait-and-see approach. And keep in mind that even though while the clamoring and the frustrations that may be bubbling out are getting a lot of attention right now, there are equally a number of members who are still continuing to stand by the president. But that being said, there is a lot of trepidation about what some of this new polling may be showing. Obviously, CBS News has a new poll that's out just today, but there's also, concerns in terms of the battlegrounds and down-ballot races, what potential impact the president could have on the ticket. So members are really kind of taking a wait-and-see approach to see how those numbers may play out. And I'm told if those numbers are really bad, then potentially you could see some other members start to come out calling on the president to step aside.
Okay, Nicole Killian, appreciate your reporting. Thank you. Well, there is also no shortage of political news across the pond. Tomorrow, the United Kingdom will hold its national election. First called by current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in May. It was considered a gamble at the time, as his party has been seeing dwindling support. BBC correspondent Damien Grammaticus is following this for us from London. So, Damien, for those not tuned into British politics, how do these elections work and who appears to be leading?
Yeah, so this is the parliamentary election, 650 seats in Parliament. You just need a one-seat majority and you form the government. And the leader of that party will be the Prime Minister, who is in the lead, not the current Prime Minister, not Rishi Sunak, who called this election, Conservative, so on the right. His poll ratings pretty poor going into this, and he's not done anything to change that. So we have about 6 hours left now of campaigning. They're crisscrossing the country. The polls are predicting what could be a historic wipeout for the Conservative Party, dropping from 350, 60 seats they won last time to perhaps just 100 or a few more. That would be the worst result in a more than 100 years history for the party. The Labour Party, centre-left, Sir Keir Starmer is leading that, look like recovering, and all the polls are suggesting they could be on course for a historic win, surging from around 200 and something seats last time to 400 and something this time. So not looking good for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
David, I'm curious because we're watching what's happening in France as well with the last round of voting there Sunday and a far-right party leading. Are we seeing an ideological shift in broader European politics?
Well, I mean, compared to France, you have two diverging sort of moves there. So in France, yes, you have the far right who look to be capitalising. Here you have the centre-left. Now, what might unite those perhaps is actually a sense of discontent with the current administrations. And that partly, I think, is bred from the pandemic, inflation that we've seen, product of the Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, pushing up energy prices in Europe. You've seen that too in the Netherlands, has also gone far right as well, the far right winning there. Here, something a little different, so moving a little bit left, but there is a sort of insurgent party on the right that is looking to capitalise too, may win a couple of seats. But really, I think broadly, there's a sense of sort of discontent with current governments manifesting itself. And here, that looks almost certain from what the polls are predicting to result in a Labour, Sir Keir Starmer-led government. And interestingly, the biggest newspaper, the popular newspaper, the Sun newspaper, tabloid, usually supports the Conservatives. In the last hour, it's come out and said, time for a change.
Okay, Damien, we'll be watching. Thanks. A family's RV burst into flames, sending 3 to the hospital. We have the details next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. 3 men from the same family were hurt when their RV burst into flames in Peabody, Massachusetts yesterday. I mean, just take a look at this video. A nearby doorbell camera captured the moment of the explosion. So a father, a grandfather, and son were rushed to the hospital. Investigators say all 3 were alert and talking. No word yet on what sparked the fire. Well, we are following the situation on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Reuters reports Israeli strikes have killed a senior Hezbollah field commander. Following the latest for us from Jerusalem is BBC News Middle East analyst Sebastian Usher. Sebastian, what's the level of concern of a wider conflict breaking out between Israel and Hezbollah? Any action being taken to de-escalate?
There was a lot of concern a few weeks ago when there was an escalation, and that followed the killing by Israel of another senior commander of Hezbollah. And that led to Hezbollah firing its largest barrage of drones and rockets into northern Israel. Since these hostilities, these near daily skirmishes between Israel and Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed armed movement in Lebanon, really started pretty much after the war erupted between Israel and Hamas. Hezbollah said that it was going to hit Israel in order to show its support for Hamas, and that's essentially what's happened since. Now, there have been concerns that were raised at that moment, and it's slightly de-escalated since then, but there's a lot of diplomatic activity going on. Amos Hochstein, the U.S. envoy, has been in Lebanon and other places trying to create a deal where Hezbollah can step back from the border. Israel can be persuaded not to go into Lebanon, not to turn this into an all-out war. An incident like this, which Hezbollah incidentally has confirmed now, named the commander as Mohammed Nasser, hasn't said that Israel carried it out. Israel hasn't either confirmed that it did so, but it seems almost certain that it did. Now the concern is that there will be another escalation within this confrontation, this kind of cat and mouse tit-for-tat game, that we may see another big barrage of rockets from Hezbollah into northern Israel. That area has essentially been deserted. There's around 60 to 70,000 Israelis who've left there. Huge security problem for the Israeli government. No resolution in sight at the moment.
Okay, Sebastian Usher, thanks for that update. We are keeping a close eye on Hurricane Beryl as the now Category 4 storm heads toward Jamaica after tearing through the Caribbean islands. Its latest projected path just ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. In Louisiana, there is a battle unfolding that has some commercial fishermen and producers of liquefied natural gas squaring off. And this is part of a bigger story about a massive increase in fossil fuel production in America. Our Ben Tracy reports from the Louisiana Gulf Coast.
When Travis Darter and his fellow commercial fishermen spread their nets into these Louisiana waters, there used to be just one word to describe it.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Yeah, we love what we do, right?
This channel flowing into the Gulf of Mexico is famous for its shrimp. Now it's known for something else.
It's like a nightmare, but when you wake up, it's still there, right?
He's talking about this liquefied natural gas export terminal called Calcasieu Pass, or CP, built next to the town of Cameron. LNG is natural gas that is supercooled into a liquid, so it can be loaded onto tankers and shipped around the world. The CP plant is owned by a company called Venture Global.
We used to have shrimp boats tied all along where this plant is.
He says they had to relocate their boats and their catch has dropped dramatically.
Got one shrimp.
He also moved his family out of Cameron, worried about air pollution from the plant.
Hell yeah, I'm mad as hell.
Venture Global denied our request for an interview, but in a statement said there are no impacts from our projects on fishing or shrimping in the area. Its CP plant is one of 8 operating LNG export terminals in the U.S. 7 more are under construction. Capacity has more than tripled since 2018 and is expected to double again by 2030. Climate activists call these new LNG plants carbon bombs. Natural gas, while considered cleaner than coal, still produces both carbon dioxide and methane emissions that are rapidly warming the planet. These new LNG projects could operate for decades, long past when scientists say the world must stop burning fossil fuels.
We are the largest exporter of natural gas in the world.
We spoke to Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm just after the White House ordered a pause on approvals of new LNG exports in January.
The pause is about what is going to happen to our economy and what is going to happen with greenhouse gas emissions. Those who are asking us to look at this have it right.
This is not the right decision.
Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill is one of 16 state attorneys general who just convinced a federal judge to temporarily lift the federal LNG pause while litigation against it proceeds. She says the pause hurts Louisiana's economy.
The country and the world is going to need natural gas.
Do you worry about the potential climate impacts?
No.
Why
because
not?
That's not my job. I mean, my job is to hold them accountable under the law.
One could also argue it's not your job to worry about the economic benefits of a particular industry.
So it doesn't just affect the industry. It affects our tax base. It affects our communities. It affects our whole state.
Travis Darter is worried about 2 more LNG plants likely to be built along this channel and what that means for his livelihood.
Yeah, he's dead. Well, I mean, we're literally fighting for our lives here.
A fight he can't afford to lose. For Eye on America, Ben Tracy, Cameron, Louisiana.
Let's bring in now CBS News at Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with another look at the forecast and Beryl. Kate.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. Yeah, Beryl, of course, our top weather story just ravaging the Caribbean and Jamaica. Within the next 3 to 4 hours, we expect Beryl to make a close pass or possibly make a landfall along the southern coast of Jamaica. Because Jamaica is such a small island, this doesn't happen often. In fact, only 2 other hurricanes have made landfall on Jamaica in the past 40 years, the most recent being Sandy back in 2012. Beryl is a Category 4 hurricane. We've just gotten the 11 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center. Beryl has not weakened much at all, still a Category 4. You can see the size and scope of that storm as it heads toward Jamaica right now with sustained winds at 145 miles per hour. So the latest forecast track update from the National Hurricane Center, again, this just came in a few minutes ago, brings Beryl as a Category 4 either over or just south of the southern coast of Jamaica within the next 3 or 4 hours. And then it does look to maintain Category 4 strength as it moves south of the Cayman Islands, and that would be overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. Very dangerous track for the Cayman Islands as well, putting them on the northern and eastern edge of that storm, and that is the most dangerous part of the storm, that right front quadrant. We now expect a Category 2 landfall along the Yucatan Peninsula by Friday morning, and look at this. By the time we get into next week, Beryl could re-strengthen to a Category 1 hurricane, possibly making landfall near Brownsville, Texas, Monday morning around 7 a.m. We'll continue to monitor the strength of that, of course, as we go into the holiday weekend. Let's talk about the 4th of July. We may have some storms rumbling in cities like New York and Philadelphia that could disrupt fireworks displays. We've got a heat advisory in Atlanta. 95 will feel as hot as 102 for the 4th of July, and storms in New Orleans as well. Still hot in Texas at 100 degrees in Dallas for July 4th. And we've got the threat for severe storms across the Midwest in cities like Indianapolis and possibly Kansas City. And that, of course, could disrupt some of your 4th of July plans. One of the nicest 4th of July forecasts is for Denver, the Mile High City at 84 degrees with sunshine. Seattle looks good, warming up there at 80, and the heat will continue to build into the weekend. Lindsay, back to you.
Thank you so much. An encore of CBS Mornings continues next. You have been watching CBS News 24/7. Stay here all day for your latest news.
Thank you.
Appreciate
My
you.
pleasure.